Welcome to this video tutorial. We will show you how to create characters in Daz 3D and export them to the Unity game engine. Let's start by looking at the Daz 3D website. Here you can download Daz Studio, and you can also download some basic characters and a first outfit so that you can follow along in this tutorial if you like. Let's look at the Daz 3D shop. When looking through content in this shop, you have to be aware of the different generations of content that are available. Genesis2 and Genesis3 are the types of characters that are relevant for us. Everything else is simply too old to be meaningful for modern game development. For this tutorial, we will use Genesis2 content, and in one of the next videos, I will talk a little bit about Genesis3 and the differences between the two generations. Here you can see the different artists publishing to the Daz 3D shop. There's actually many more than that. And the important thing to note is that you need a different license for each of the artists publishing Daz 3D content. That is, if you want to publish the characters in a commercial game, you will need a license that allows you to do exactly that. There is an indie game developer license and a commercial game developer license for Daz originals available. Type of license depends on your annual income. If you use content by other artists, you will have to check whether they have a license available, and if they do, you need to purchase that license in order to use their content. Please make sure that whenever you're purchasing any content from the Daz 3D shop, that you're never paying full price. There's always a sale going on, and there's also a Platinum Club membership that will save you further money. Let's get started in Daz Studio. I'm using Daz Studio 4.9 Pro, which is the version that you can download for free. Over here, you have the Smart Content pane. And under Figures, we already have our Genesis 2 base meshes available. Here's also Genesis 3, which we'll use in a future video. Let's start by creating a male character. In the scene view, you can easily move around, rotate, and zoom in or out with those tools up here. Let's give our character some hair and some clothing. You see a lot of different options here. Most of that is paid content. I will simply select some of that content to create a character. You will just select whatever you have available after downloading the software. Select a shirt, some pants, shoes, and let's also add some accessories like glasses. After adding shoes, we have to make sure that our character is still aligned with our floor. When the character was first imported, it was perfectly aligned with the floor plane. Now the soles of the shoes are actually underneath the floor. To fix that, we will simply go to Edit, Figure, and move to Floor. And you can see now our shoes are aligned with the floor again. This is really important to align our character later on in Unity with our coordinate system. Over here on the right, we have our hierarchy. You can see Genesis 2 male base mesh and our hair. When selecting any of these items, we can select different materials for each item over here. Let's change our hair color to black. Moreover, we have a lot of different options available to us here. We still have the hair selected, and now in this window here, which is pretty similar to the Unity inspector, we can change a lot of the properties of the hair. For example, we can change the hair volume. We can do the same for all these different other items. For example, the shirt, pants, and shoes that are children of the base character mesh. Let's change the shirt color to red. Before we can export this character to Unity, we have to optimize it. There's basically 3 different ways you can optimize your character. Firstly, you can export the character to Unity as it is and use tools within Unity, such as the Cruncher plugin, to optimize your character. Optimizing means reducing the number of triangles so that the character works well in real-time 3D rendering. A second option is to export the character to tools like Maya or Blender and optimize the character there. Now that is an option that I will not talk about in detail here. Instead, what I will do is I will use the tool called Decimator, which is right within Daz Studio. This is a paid tool that you can purchase on the Daz 3D store. Now, if you're serious about using Daz 3D content in your projects, this is probably the tool that you want to use because it is very convenient and it gives you a lot of control over the character. Let's get started. Let's select our base mesh and click Prepare to Decimate, which will convert the whole character into triangles. You already see once we click this, it basically converts the Genesis2 male base mesh and all of its children. That also means that the hair is not affected by this change yet, so we have to do that separately. And now you can also see that we already have some slight issues here with our pants and some skin popping through. We will fix that in a couple minutes. Over here we can see the number of triangles each of those items has. And we have 2 sliders, one for the percentage of triangles and the other one is the actual target number of triangles. Let's start with the glasses. Let's zoom in a little bit. And let's change the number from 15,852 triangles to, let's say, 2,000. Can you see a difference? Barely. Now we've basically reduced the number of triangles for the glasses to 12.6%, and the glasses look still okay. Let's do the same for the base mesh of the character. Let's reduce to 20,000. And already you can see there's quite a difference here. And the nose and the mouth really look a little bit low quality here. You can really see sort of the edges. So what we can do here is we can actually make sure that the budget of 20,000 that we chose here for the base mesh is used properly. Let's move over to the weights pane here and look at Genesis2 male. Here we have the different weights of the different body parts, and we can select which areas we would like to focus on and spend most of our triangles. Let's say our character will usually wear long pants, so we maybe only need half the amount of triangles for our legs. Same goes for something like toenails. I don't think our character will walk around barefoot, so maybe let's put this to 0.1. Torso to 0.7. And things like the face are really important, so we will give it a weight of 2. Now those weights are relative, so we can basically use numbers as we like. Let's also put head to 2, and let's see what that does. Let's click on Set Weight. And already you can see it makes quite a difference. Our character already looks much, much better. You can see that the iris here is some odd shape, and we don't spend enough triangles on it. So let's change that. Let's set iris to 5. Let's see what that does. Okay, something changed. Maybe pupils. All right, much better. And you can see it's more round now. Okay, we set our weights, so we can go back to resolutions and adjust the other items. Shirt. Maybe let's go down to 8,000 for the shirt. And it still looks okay. The folds have changed a little bit, but it looks okay overall. Shoes. Certainly don't want to spend a lot of triangles on our shoes. 5,000. Looks okay. 3,000. Still okay. Hands. 10,000. Okay. Well, we still have some issues here with the skin popping through. But that's fine. Overall, we're spending 43,000 triangles. Let's click done for now. All right, let's go back to our pans. Let's select them in the hierarchy. And let's look through the different parameters here. The one thing we can do to start is there's a parameter called enable smoothing. This parameter exists for most of the items, and we can simply turn it off. That will sometimes already get rid of some of the artifacts that we see. Now, in this case here, our pants are simply too tight. Because we changed some of the complexity of the legs and the pants, what we can do is we can simply expand all. This is usually a pretty handy parameter to change so that we don't have any skin popping through. Let's set this to maybe 40, 45, 50. Okay, we still have a little tiny spot here. Not sure whether we can actually get rid of it. Let's leave the pants for now. We can already see the next problem now. Our pants are colliding with our shirt. So let's select the shirt. And let's adjust the front out just a little bit. And you can see you can tweak all of these parameters back out to your liking so that the model looks okay. And there's no weird overlap going on. Oftentimes you get issues with shoes and pants overlapping. In this case, it's pretty simple for us. We're not wearing any boots or anything, so this is fine. Okay, one last step for us before we can export. We have to simplify our hair. Hair is usually very complex, so it is really important that we decimate or reduce the number of triangles in our hair. As you can see, we're spending 186,000 triangles right now. Let's get down to, let's say 15,000. You can barely see a difference. I can already tell you that hair is usually quite problematic when exporting it into Unity. You can see sort of this little bald spot up here. We will not get rid of that. Even if we go back up again to 150,000, there's still going to be a small bald spot. So let's leave it as is. I think this is pretty good as a start. Let's click done. Let's save our scene so that we can get back to it later and make further adjustments. And I already created a Unity project. Let's save our scene in here. Now let's export. Let's export as FBX because FBX is simply the best file format when creating content for Unity. And we get this dialog here for our export options for FBX. Make sure it is set to FBX 2014 binary. Over here, we simply select figures. We don't need any cameras, lights, and so on because we will create these in Unity. Animations is interesting because there is a tool, a paid tool called Animate2, where you can create animations right within Daz 3D or Daz Studio. We're not using this right now. I usually prefer to animate my characters in other tools. But if you do, you have to select animations here. The last one here is important, morphs. We will not use it in this video, but I will show you how morphs work later on because it is a really nice feature by getting blend shapes into Unity. Let's leave everything as is right now. Select all those different things that are here as currently selected, and let's click accept. Let's open Unity and wait for the import to finish. All right, here we are in Unity and our character has imported successfully. Let's drag and drop it into the scene. Select the model. Let's just check its settings. Scale factor of 1, that's fine. We have to make sure that it is an appropriate scale for our the rest of the environment and other models that we might use later on. Import blend shapes. We can keep this selected for now because we will import morphs and blend shapes later on in a next video. So I'll just keep this ticked for now. If you don't use any morphs or blend shapes, you can simply unselect this. Let's click on rig. Let's change the animation type to humanoid. We don't optimize our game object right now because we have our glasses selected, and I just want to show you how this works. Click on configure. Our scene will be saved automatically. Let's have a look at the character's rig. Now the Daz 3D model automatically comes with a rig. That means all the different bones are imported as well, so that we can animate our character in Unity straight away if we like. Everything is green, so everything looks fine. We can simply click on done. Now let's have a look at our character in more detail. We see the different items here in the hierarchy. This is the skeleton. And here under head, we actually have our glasses. Now these already are exported from Daz in the right place. If you import some other items like bracelets or wristwatch or other glasses later on, you can simply drag and drop them into the hierarchy here under head or under forearm or any of the other bones that are relevant. And in this case here, the glasses will rotate appropriately with the head because they're a child object of the head. So this is already set up correctly. Now let's have a look at the character overall. When looking at all the different items here, you can see that the character already is imported with all the different materials and textures applied, so this is great. One thing that we can change is the smoothness parameter here of our shader, just because most of the time the different textures, the different materials here are not as smooth as 0.5 here, so we can lower that value to make them look a little bit more realistic. Now obviously you can spend a lot of time tweaking these parameters for the actual physical properties of the fabrics, but in our case we will just be quick about it and reduce some of the smoothness so that the objects are not as shiny. Now the little rings here are metal, so they are actually okay if they're a little bit shiny. All right. Same for the skin. So if we click on Genesis2 male, we have all the different materials here for the different parts of the body, limbs, face, torso, and so on. Let's have a look at the face. All right, we can see that something's not right with the eyelashes. Our eyelashes here look a bit weird, but thankfully there's also a opacity map here that we can use for our eyelashes. Simply change the alpha source to from grayscale, alpha is transparency, and already we have our eyelashes. Let's just drag this into the albedo slot. And you can see we have the eyelashes here. Now you can see this white shade around it. That is because our rendering mode for the eyelashes is set to transparent. However, we need to set it to fade to make sure that none of the reflective properties or anything are carried over into this material. And we're all fading that out. Okay. Now, when we look at the skin, there's not much we can do at the moment. Obviously, there are skin shaders out there that are more complex, and we can do a lot to improve the visuals of the character. But for now, I think we're quite happy with the character as is. I've seen tutorials that suggest putting the actual skin texture into the detail albedo slot. I would disagree with that just because the detail albedo is usually meant for something like skin pores or like very fine details that are not identical to this initial albedo map here. So I think we can just leave the character as is. One thing we need to tackle is the hair, because as you can see, the hair looks pretty messy right now. Now, the unfortunate situation is that there is no straightforward way to deal with any hairstyle coming out of Daz 3D or any other tools for that purpose, because each artist lays out the hair differently and uses different textures, different styles, and so on, so that there's not one straightforward way to deal with hair. Now, for this hairstyle here, one thing we can do is we can look in our textures folder that was created, and there is those three textures here that have T in their name for transparency. Let's change their alpha source from grayscale, alpha is transparency, and that will actually get us much closer to a decent hairstyle. What we can do now is simply replace the textures that are applied, in this case Brit Sculpt, with its transparent version, long, and others. And we have white hair at the moment. We also have these white shades again, so we can deal with that by just simply changing our rendering mode to fade. And that's much better already. Now, how do we get the color in there? Well, firstly, we could just change the albedo versus with the color picker here. But instead, what we can do is we can also drop the actual textures into the detail albedo slot. Both of those options work. Et voila. We can still tweak the coloring a little bit, make it a little bit darker if we like. And we can already see we have some slight issues with the transparency. Now, that is a problem with the shader that does not exactly know which of the transparent shades is in the front and which is in the back. And that is a problem that's very common for any type of hairstyle and any type of rendering of hairstyles. And there's a couple of customized shaders out there on the asset store or with other products that you can purchase, but I will tackle that in a separate video tutorial because it's a fairly complex topic, and I would like to just tackle different characters next to each other so that we can kind of see the overall impact some of the shaders have. So for now, I think if we're a bit further away, the character looks semi-decent. And it is also optimized enough that we can work with it right now in the game engine. Let's actually have a look at that. When we select the model, let's select the Genesis2 male. Down here, we see the triangles, and I think we set the Genesis2 male shape to 20,000 triangles. It imported as 19,999, so we're actually pretty close. And as I mentioned, the decimator in Daz Studio will give us quite a lot of control over the complexity. Now, obviously, we can create different levels of detail for this character. Let's say we create a version that has much more detail, and that is for close-up renders, close-up shots for our character. And we can also create versions of this character that has much less detail in the background. And then we could use like an LOD, a level of detail group in Unity to kind of seamlessly switch between these different versions. All of that is possible if we would go back into Daz Studio and create different versions of different complexity of the character. So it gives us a lot of options. For now, this is a nice character to get started with, and we will go into more detail about morphs and the Genesis 3 version of this character in the next video tutorial. Thanks for watching.